Okay? Public service announcement. Hold on. I need everybody in the sound of my voice to hear what I'm about to say. This is the day that the Lord has made, okay? Meaning, if anybody gonna come into your life that is being condescending, cruel, arrogant, dismissive, you can make your way out that door right there, okay? Go right there. Because over here, it's nothing but love, consideration, compassion, patience, kindness, relevance, and visibility over here. That's what we're doing over here. And the reason why I had to come on like that is because I happened to see a conversation in the midst of me walking home that made me feel some type of way. I'm not going to use the word triggered because I'm very tired of that word, and it is it's a word that some people, unfortunately, children misuse in certain ways that are not applicable to the actual terminology, but we're not going to talk about that today. I just heard a disparaging conversation between two women that was not the kindest, is what I'm going to say, because the babies are here, and I'm going to keep it very PG. But I'm going to go ahead and hit you with another statement. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. Shout out to Thumper from Bambi, from Walt Disney's Bambi, and from the way I grew up. If you have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. Go over with other people who don't also have nothing nice to say. You can go hang out with them, but don't come over here with that negativity. Life is already hard enough for good people out here. I have friends who work for the government who are not getting paid right now. I have friends trying to figure out whether or not they're going to be able to feed their children and get them new clothes, and whether or not Christmas or even Thanksgiving is going to happen, okay? If you have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. And kindly move out that door. The door's right there. In the words of Genie from Aladdin, what did he say? He said, well, I'm gonna flip that quote, but it's the line where Genie was like, your line is, I'm going to free the genie anytime. My line is, the door is right there. You can leave anytime. For all my friends and wonderful lovelies who are here to have a good time, to love on each other no matter what color, shade, or creed, or nationality, or vibration you come with, welcome to Storytime with Chris. As I always say, lovelies, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max, relax, and chillaxing time. In between time, mean time, scheme time, study time, break time, CP time, anytime that you want to hear a highly animated voice bringing wonderful stories of magic, fantasy, science fiction, adventure, and music, and many, many more in between. Hi, lovelies. Oh, I had to get that off my chest. I know I'm a little bit late. But I had to take care of some things before I got on here. But even with what I said in my introduction, even though there is heavy stuff happening around, kids, I need y'all to understand. I'm going to teach you a black proverb that I grew up all my life. All my life I had to fight. No, I'm just kidding. The phrase I'm going to impart upon you is, trouble don't last always. Repeat after me. Trouble don't last always. What does that mean? It may be rough right now. It may be unpleasant. Things may not be panning out the way we want them to. But what I know, and who protects me knows, is that trouble does not last. It don't last always. It's not going to be forever. All of this struggle, all of this arguing, all of this contentious moments that we're having, not only in this world, but in this country specifically, it's not going to last forever. It's not. We could be kind to each other. We can look out for each other. And this is why I'm living where I live. And even if I didn't live in Yellow Springs, if I was in Cleveland or Atlanta, I'd probably be doing the same thing. My neighbor, God love her, and I'm not shouting her out to gas her up, but shout out to my neighbor McKenna, because she is a godsend. This woman had a Halloween party on Halloween, okay? Which I was invited to. Unfortunately, my costume that was a part of the theme for the party did not show up until November 6th, but that's another conversation for another day. She decided to have her guests bring in canned goods or money to donate to our local food banks all over Yellow Springs, and is using those proceeds to make sure that people have food for their children and their families. That's so awesome. Such a blessing. Such a good deed. Such a wonderful thing. And that's what we should be doing. Even in the midst of all of this, trouble don't last always, but it can get away a lot quicker if we do one little bit of kindness. Just one little bit of kindness. You may think it's small, but it means a whole lot to somebody else who really needed it, okay? Keep that in mind. Let's get to our story. Okay, last time we were here, Kara has finally reunited with Lightfoot and the Dimblethumb, who came in and saved them from the Delvers. And now they've landed at a safe haven with, yet again, one of my favorite characters from the series. He is back from the first book. Get into it. You'll figure out who it is in a second. Ouch. Ouch, I sat on my leg too long. Pin needles. Chapter 11. Underground Journey. A small man stepped out of the darkness. His skin was a deep, beautiful deep brown. His eyes, so large that looked almost comic, and his serious face were topped by bushy sprouts of silvery hair. He wore a coarsely woven robe in which shades of red, brown, and orange mixed to make it look rather like a distant view of a forest floor in autumn. "Grimwald!" cried Kara in delight. "What are you doing here?"
"Well, you were coming to see me, weren't you?"
asked the little man, sounding impatient. "I wasn't sure. I hope we might, but..." He cut her off with a wave of his hand.
"The Queen sent a message."
"You mean other unicorns have gotten here ahead of us?" asked Kara in surprise.
"Did I say that?"
asked Grimwald, rolling his eyes. "Then how..." She broke off as she remembered the scrying pool with which they once tried to contact the Queen.
"Arabella has many ways to communicate with me," said Grimwald. "Anyway, she heard from Gamma that you were coming this way and asked me to meet you."
He narrowed his eyes.
"She didn't mention that there be so many of you."
"We had unexpected company,"
said Moonheart sourly. Grimwald sighed heavily, as if accepting some tragic turn of fate.
"Well, I suppose you'll all be wanting to come in. Nothing to do about it, I guess. It's not like anyone would really care if it was an imposition, or if I already had more work than I can handle, or anything like that. Come on, come on. We can't stand here all night."
With that, he disappeared back into the darkness. Thomas began folding up his cart, something Kara always enjoyed watching. It was astonishing to see the huge thing disappear into itself, though she could never figure out exactly how it happened. The tinker had reduced the cart to something he could easily tuck under one arm when Moonheart motioned for Kara to lead the way. As she stepped into the dark opening, the squidgem leapt onto her shoulder to ride her.
"Wowza, wowza!"
he chattered.
"Cranky, cranky, old guy!"
"Shh," she cautioned, not because his words weren't true, but she didn't want him to make the situation worse. As soon as they entered the hillside, she saw a glimmer of light to her right. The passageway turned, then turned again. Rounding the second corner, Kara found herself in a small chamber lined with dark reddish wood. From the far wall hung a lantern, casting a cheery glow. Beneath it stood Grimwald, his hands resting on what looked like the captain's wheel of an old-fashioned ship. On the floor beside him was a backpack.
"You better go on a bit," he said gruffly. "Won't be room in here for everyone."
Kara nodded and did as he asked, moving along the stony corridor that stretched to his left. She could hear the others enter behind her, the unicorns muttering in annoyance because the turns were so tight it was hard for them to maneuver. Finally, she heard Lightfoot say, "That's it. I'm the last." Grimwald grunted.
"Are you sure? I was beginning to think the Queen had sent an entire army."
He paused, then said more softly and clearly surprised,
"By Bellenmore's belt, it's Lightfoot. What are you doing here?" he chuckled. "I noticed you waited till last to come in, staying as far from your uncle as you can."
"I thought you didn't like idle chatter," said Lightfoot sharply.
"Information gathering is never idle."
"Why not just close the door before someone else tries to get in?" snapped Lightfoot.
"What do you think I'm doing?"
said Grimwald, sounding equally testy. Kara heard a creak, looked back past the others. She was able, just barely, to see Grimwald turning the wooden wheel. Next came a rumbling noise and then a heavy, as the boulder that masked the entry into the hill fell back in place. A moment later, Grimwald joined her at the front of the procession. He was carrying the lantern that had hung in the small chamber. I knew we would be passing near the edge of your territory, said Kara, but I didn't realize we were so close to it already.
You're not.
I don't understand. If we're not near your house, then why are we...
This tunnel leads to my home, but it would take us at least a day's journey to get there. Anyway, that's not where we're going.
I still don't understand, said Kara, beginning to feel frustrated.
You want to get to the northern forest, right?
Yes?
Well, it will take you forever the way you were going. I have a better route.
All underground? Asked Kara nervously.
I like being underground. Besides, we'll travel more quickly this way, making the same trip overland with all those hills and valleys and forests and other nonsense. Not to mention the way that foolish river twists and turns would take at least twice as long.
Kara felt a surge of relief. Anything that would get them to Ebelon's cave faster was welcome to her.
You'll probably be safer this way, too,
added Grimwald somewhat as an afterthought. That would be
nice,
said Jacques, who was walking behind him.
I just as soon avoid danger as much as possible.
Sensible, said Grimwald. Hardly what I would have expected from one of you players.
Moonheart snorted in amusement. It was a wondrous journey. They traveled along corridors lined with wood and others made of stone. Some of the stone passages appeared to have been made by hand. Others were obviously natural, sometimes widening so that the entire company could walk side by side. At other times, a passage would narrow so sharply that even going single file, they could barely squeeze through it. Once they had to stop because the Dimplethumb got stuck and howled pitifully until they could free him, which was only possible because Jacques was still behind him and so could push, while Thomas pulled him from in front. Moonheart and Belle stood watching this, both looking exasperated. Shortly after they had freed the Dimplethumb, the passage opened into an enormous cave so big that the light from Grimwald's tavern couldn't penetrate its depths. Ahead of them was a reddish glow. Kara heard a low rumbling sound. As they drew closer to the glow, they could see that it came from a wide gap in the cavern floor. How are we going to get over that? She asked nervously. Without saying a word, Grimwald pointed to the right, where a narrow stretch of rock spanned the chasm.
I thought you said this was safer than traveling above ground, grumbled Jacques.
I said safer, not risk-free. Besides, if you don't fall off, it's no problem at all.
I'd rather take my chances at a good clean fight, muttered Belle. The rumble grew louder as they walked. From the red glow ahead of them, Kara expected to find the chasm filled with bubbling lava. She was astonished when they reached it to see that the noise was actually made by an enormous cataract. A thundering torrent of water had gushed from a sheer wall about a quarter of a mile to the right, then tumbled 50 or 60 feet to form a river that raged and rolled beneath them on to their left for as far as she could see. What made it even more remarkable was that the water exploding from the wall glowed a brilliant red. The spray and mist it threw up were crimson as well, and the river that roared beneath them might as well have been made of blood. Kara stared at the water in awe. What makes it glow? She asked, shouting to be heard above the roar of the water.
Grimwald shrugged. Could be minerals and picks it up as it travels underground. Could be some kind of tiny plant or animal.
Could be magic, added Thomas.
Possibly, agreed Grimwald. Though if it is, I don't see the point of it.
Do all wonders need to have a purpose? Responded Thomas. Grimwald snorted in response, then said,
Follow me.
He stepped onto the stone bridge, which was about 3 feet wide with an irregular surface. Fortunately, it was far enough from the falls that the spray didn't reach it. Excuse me. So the surface was not made slick by water. Unfortunately, the drop to the river below was well over 100 feet.
Well, at least it will be a quick death if I fall,
said Jacques as he stepped onto the bridge. Kara followed him, and after a few steps made the mistake of looking down at the glowing torrent. She felt herself sway and had to close her eyes for a moment. After that, she forced herself to focus on her feet, and not the abyss below. The Squidgem, however, scampered around fearlessly, shooting ahead, zipping back and forth across the bridge, even climbing over the edge and clinging to the side. Kara tried to ignore him until he got underneath her feet and nearly tripped her. Squidgem, she snapped, get up here on my shoulder before you kill me. And don't move until we get to the other side.
Hotcha, stinky, cranky girl.
He muttered sullenly, but he did as she told him. They stopped at the top of the bridge's arc to admire the waterfall. Turning to her left, Kara could now see that the river flowed in a straight line for another mile or two, then disappeared out of sight. Though whether it plunged over another falls or the cavern ended and the river simply began flowing through a tunnel again, she could not tell. Once across the bridge, it took another hour to reach the far side of the cavern. Kara had no idea how Grimwald kept on track, for there was no path that she could see, and the space was so large that even the echoes of their footsteps seemed distant. But that he did keep on track, there was no doubt, for when they finally came to the far side, they were directly in front of a small tunnel, no more than 5 feet high and 3 feet wide. It was tiny compared to the vastness of the cavern wall, and if you missed it, you could have spent hours, maybe days, trying to find it. And that was assuming it was the only one and you didn't go wandering off in the wrong tunnel altogether. How did you bring us directly to this spot? Asked Kara.
Practice,
Grunted Grimwald as he entered the tunnel. Another hour or so of traveling brought the group to a comfortably sized cave that was dimly lit by glowing, pale blue fungus that grew in rocks surrounding a pool of water, which, by the way, there are mushrooms or myconids, or as you would call them in the more scientific relation to mushrooms, and fungi that have the ability to have bioluminescence, which is to be able to give off a natural light. It's really cool. You might find them in your local forest or your nature preserve. It's actually a thing. There is even certain lichen and moss that has bioluminescence that is really interesting. Just because plants can't talk doesn't mean they're not organic and sentient. Keep that in mind.
we'll stop here for the night.
Said Grimwald.
How do you know it's night?
Asked Jacques. The old dwarf snorted.
I listen to my body. Do you have the light to tell you everything?
Jacques shrugged.
If I listened to my body, it would have been time to rest all day long.
Thomas pulled out one of his watches, opened the top, shook it once, then said, "It's night, all right." Grimwald snorted. Setting down his pack, he opened it and removed a large knife. He began slicing chunks of the blue fungus away from the rock, chunks that he distributed to the others. "You want me to eat this?" asked Kara in dismay.
You can wear it if you'd rather. I suspect, however, it will do you more good inside than out.
She took a tiny bite. This was luster, after all. Maybe it would turn out to be unexpectedly delicious. It didn't.
Yuck! Ptsee!
Sputtered the Squidgem, who had tried a bit at the same time.
Nasty, nasty, nasty!
My sentiments exactly, thought Kara as the Squidgem spat the fungus onto the ground where he was crouching. To her surprise, the others seemed to think it tasted just fine. She wondered if it was one of those weird foods that only grown-ups seem to like. Sheer hunger forced her to take 2 more, then she gave up. Excuse me. Now that they had stopped moving, she could feel the coolness of the caves. She took the cloak Gamma had given her from her pack and wrapped it around her shoulders. She also took out her calendar stick and carved another notch. 11 days gone. Would they make it on time or not? Despite her worries over the time, despite her hunger in the hard stone floor, exhaustion worked its magic and she was soon fast asleep. They spent most of the next day traveling in single file through narrow tunnels, which made it difficult to speak to the person ahead of you, especially if the person ahead of you was a unicorn. And the few times they came out into the caverns, the vast spaces seemed somehow inappropriate for talking, as if the huge underground rooms had a sacred quality. When they did enter the more open areas, Kara made it a point to take turns walking past each of her companions. She spent the most time beside Lightfoot and the Dibblethumb, of course, but she wanted all of them to know they were important to her, that she cared for them. It hurt her heart that Moonheart and Belle were so obvious about avoiding the 2 newest members of their band, always positioning themselves as far from Lightfoot and the Dibblethumb as they could and refusing to speak to them unless necessary. She wished they could all be more friendly with each other. Dinner was better than that night, for they came to a cave with an underground stream, and the Dibblethumb was able to catch some fish for them. Pale and blind, with enormous sightless eyes, they were ugly to look at, but extremely tasty. At least tasty for raw fish, thought Kara, finding herself actually thankful that her grandmother had insisted she try all kinds of food over the years, up to and including sushi. When they had finished eating, Grimwald called them together and said,
Tomorrow I'll be sending you back to the world above, so tonight I want to share a story with you.
Kara was surprised to hear a whicker of satisfaction from Belle, who then added,
would have been quite a thing to travel 3 days with the Keeper of the Chronicles and not be given a story. I will give you this one at the request of the Queen.
What story is it? Asked Kara, excited but also a little nervous. Grimwald looked directly at her.
It is the tale of how your grandmother first came to Luster. When you're ready, I'll begin.
And that is where we will end for tonight. All right, my lovelies. Love y'all. See y'all next time. Bye-bye.